الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى، وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد.
وقال المحدث:
أنا بقى حلفت نظرك لشيء ربما لم تلتفت إليه.
Demons of mankind and of jinn. I would like to draw your attention to something that perhaps most of you never took notice of. When you read the entire Quran, you would not find one single verse that describes Satan as an enemy of God. Not at all. You would not find any such words. Instead, God says, "And Satan is indeed an avowed enemy to mankind." 12:5. In 298, we recite, "Allah is in enmity with unbelievers who deny Him." He did not state in the whole Quran that He is in enmity with Satan. However, there are several mentions of enmity to a category of humans. O you believers, do not make a friendly intimacy with my enemy and yours, the ones who are disposed to strive against Allah, His cause, His messenger, and His faith. 61. And you Muslims, prepare for them all you can recruit of strength, armed forces and mounted troops, to strike terror into the hearts and minds of Allah's enemy, who is your enemy. 8:60. God said to the mother of Moses, "Put the child in the chest and throw the chest into the river. The waves will drive the chest to the bank, and there shall he be picked by a common enemy of mine and of his." Pharaoh 20:39. But why is the enmity of the devils among mankind of greater threat than that of Satan and his devils of jinn? This is because the devils of jinn, when faced with the supplication, "I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed devil," when faced with such uttered statement, jinn devils flee. On the other hand, even if you recited the whole Quran to them, still demons of mankind will not move an inch. Besides being of similar composure and personality as mankind and being visible by man, these make their impact much more pronounced on humans. It is a well-known fact that he who is away from sight is away from the heart. The more remote you are sighted, the less impact affects you. This is noted when a son has left his home, father and mother, traveled abroad and stayed there for several years. When he gets the news of his father's death, he is much less bereaved by the loss than the other son who has stayed with his parents. The calamity was ameliorated for the one living far away and augmented for the one residing close to its source. The latter is used to see his father every day, to talk and deal with him. We say that habits find their way insidiously into you just by regular contact. For this reason, the Prophet has prohibited living with infidels for long in one place or having close relations with them. Such gregariousness and companionability will usually end in common habit form. Acquiring habits from infidels will kill a believer's heart. There is this narration that some scholars relate to the Prophet, though I don't, that goes, "I discard those who live long among infidel communities." There are other more authentic narrations of the Prophet of that same meaning, such as, "A polytheist does not make friends except with the likes of himself," and "Their fires," meaning that of Muslims and polytheists, "should not be visible to one another." Suppose we are on a mountain. Arabs in the past used to light fires on top of mountains for the guidance of those who have gone astray in the wide desert. You would know that there are some people there and would head for them to get food, water, and shelter. When one man lights a fire on top of this mountain and another on top of another, when would they not see each other? This occurs only if both mountains were very far apart. The Prophet says that you should keep this long distance between you and infidels. as habits are insidiously acquired through regular contact. There are clear indications of the last statement. Look at those Muslims who live abroad. I've seen that with my very own eyes. When I was there and went to buy a telephone with a company of some Muslim brothers who have been staying in some Western country for long, we came across this long queue of people standing to get their tickets for watching a movie in a cinema. While waiting for their turn to reach the box office, boys and girls were entertaining themselves by hugging and kissing. When I saw this scene, it was as if my head has been hit by a stone. I shivered and my heart was fluttering. But where were my mates? I found them laughing cunningly at my expressions. We bought the telephone, and on our way back I asked them, "Why was this malignant laugh of yours?" They said, "We said to ourselves, let's see if he will have the same expression that we had when we first came here." So when they were new to this foreign land, they panicked like myself to see such public delinquency. They moved their faces away and asked God for forgiveness, but once their stay extended, they got used to such scenes. Wherever one directs his vision, left or right, he would see something similarly obscene. There is no place left for him to look except to the sky. God only knows what will happen with more progress. Will we have to fly high in the sky to avoid such scenes? One becomes familiar with obscenity and nudity. When he comes back to his homeland and sees some couple hugging or kissing in a dark alley or under a bridge, he is not moved anymore. This is something to be dreaded, the loss of the spirit of jealousy due to familiarity. This is why human devils are much more dangerous. For all the harm they do, God has never declared enmity to Satan and his jinn devils. He declared enmity towards infidels of mankind. He said that these are his enemies. One must take notice of that. God has described infidels and polytheists as his enemies. So how can one still become friendly with them? How can you show affection to those when God hates them? The least is not to love them as God hates them. God has said in 39:7, "It does not please him to see those whom he created in order to worship him actually deny him." These ones adopt the thing most hated by the Lord of all the worlds, the one thing that is absolutely unforgivable, polytheism. The answer to that is to stick to monotheism, your unshakable creed as a Muslim. This Quran is miraculous. If you are alert to the deep meanings behind the words, your faith will get stronger. Let's look into 3 sets of verses. First, in chapter 7, verses 199 to 200, recite, "Be indulgent and favor forbearance, making due allowances, and enjoin conformity of life and conduct to the requirements of morality, disregarding the impudent who are insolently disrespectful. And if Satan entices you by suggesting diversions or discord secretly into your mind, do not consent nor be actuated, but commit yourself to Allah, counter to the evil he instigated. Allah is indeed omnipresent with unlimited audition and omniscient." The second set of verses, "Repress your offended feelings and repel evil with what is gracious in words and action, and pray, to you, O Allah, my Creator, do I commit myself counter to the satanic instigations suggested to the mind. And to you, O Allah, do I commit myself counter to their presence near me." 23:96 to 98. The third set of verses, "Nor does a deed crowned with equity and goodwill compare with a deed tinted with evil and ill will. Therefore, repel what distastefully affects you by what is morally and spiritually sublime. And there you will find that he who harbors to you enmity and ill will has come to be as though he were a friend actuated with the feeling of sincerity. Nor can such a disposition that is characterized with sublimity be attained except by those who exercise patience in adversity, forbearance under provocation, and constancy in labor and effort. Nor can such a disposition be attained except by those who are so fortunate as to be divinely endowed with such a privilege. And if Satan entices you by suggesting diversity or discord secretly to your mind, do not consent nor be actuated, but commit yourself to Allah, counter to the evil He instigated. Allah is indeed the omnipresent with unlimited audition and the omniscient. 41:34-36. These three sets of verses have no peer in the whole Quran. There is no fourth to them. Each of these three sets of verses is divided into two parts. One first section concerned with humans, and another second one concerned with Satan. In the first parts of the three sets of verses, God urges us to deal with one another in goodness, be indulgent and favor forbearance, and disregard the impudent. That is to say, those among humans who show disrespect to Allah. Now, on moving to the second section, and if Satan entices you by suggesting diversions or discord secretly to your mind, we see that it is concerned with Satan. Also in chapter 23, the believers, the first section of the verses is concerned with the attitude that should be taken against the evil rebels of mankind. Repress your offended feelings and repel evil with what is gracious in words and action. Likewise, the first section of the verses of chapter 41 guides us on how to treat one's human opponents. Repel what distastefully affects you by what is morally and spiritually sublime. Thus, in all three locations concerned with humans, God exhorts us to make our dealings gentle, kind, and forgiving. Now, when looking into the second parts of the verses, those concerned with Satan, there is no such thing as gentleness and mercy. Unlike humans, Satan will never accept any compromises or ransoms. He is determined to entice you into evil and wrongdoing. If there is this muscular goon in the neighborhood, I can avoid his harm by giving him money or doing him favors. I may smile in his face or stay away from him. Surely there is some way that I can reach some solution with him. But with Satan there is no such thing. His only relentless objective is to make you a resident of hellfire. Thus God never urges you to deal with him in any kindness. Now let us pay attention to something in the verses that illustrates the eloquence of the Quran. We note that in two of the three verses we have in hand the second part of the verses is of almost the similar wording. In 7:200 we recite, and if Satan entices you by suggesting diversions or discord secretly to your mind, do not consent nor be actuated, but commit yourself to Allah, counter to the evil He instigated. Allah is indeed omnipresent with unlimited audition and omniscient. 41:36. In 41:36 it is the same wording, but the end is Allah is indeed the omnipresent with unlimited audition and the omniscient. The only difference between both verses is that attributes of Allah, omnipresent and omniscient, are defined by the pronoun the in the latter verses. To be able to understand the Quran properly, we must look into the context. Any words of any speech come in context, being preceded by some words and followed by others. These words cannot be pulled off that context, or else the meaning is lost. For example, Abu Nawas, the old Arab poet, did exactly this when he pulled off a part of a verse of the Quran from its context. Woe to the worshippers who are oblivious of their act of worship, and when they perform it, their countenance reflect absence of mind. 107:4-5. He said, God did not say, woe to those who get drunk, but he said, woe to the worshippers. This is nonsense. For this, scholars have laid down a strict rule. Context is essential, as our religion is clean, respectable, precise, and integral. The problem is with ignorant ones, delving into what they do not know. If you read the phrase, "May God offer you guidance," are you politely cursing the person for his ignorance, or are you actually praying for his guidance? When someone does something wrong and you tell him, "May God offer you guidance," you are certainly not praying for him. But if someone is close to you and you say to him, "May God offer you guidance, care, and strength," then certainly you are wishing him good and sincerely praying for his guidance. What made the difference? It is the context and the situation in which the phrase is said. Another example from the Quran: if we tell someone that he is dignified, is this praise or curse? Of course, we are praising him. If we tell him that he is gracious, is this praise or curse? Again, this is a praise. But when we read what the Almighty says in 44:49, "Now taste this just retribution, hellfire, for you have long considered yourself dignified and gracious, abusing your might over right." Is this praise or curse? Of course, this is curse and condemn that brought him to hellfire. God is talking to this worldly tyrant, telling him that he was dignified because of his power, fortune, and authority, that he was gracious as no one could dare let him down. One wonders, but are you still dignified and gracious in hellfire? No one can say that. These qualities, dignity and graciousness, were used here in this verse for praise, despite the fact that these words are ones of praise. What made the words of curse? What made them words of curse? It is the context. Another example. A smile could be a reflection of adoration and love, but it could denote dislike and anger. In the conquest of Tabuk, Ka'b ibn Malik, together with a group of Muslims including some hypocrites, lagged behind the Prophet and his troops. When the Prophet came back from the conquest, the ones who had lagged and did not join the forces rushed to the Prophet's mosque to apologize to him and to swear that they never intended to back out. The Prophet accepted their apology and delegated their real intentions to Allah. When Ka'b ibn Malik came to meet the Prophet, he did not have any excuse to say. Ka'b narrates, "When I entered the mosque, the Prophet saw me. He smiled to me in anger." It is well known that a smile reflects contempt rather than outrage. Later, when Ka'b's repentance was accepted by God, as stated in a verse of the Quran revealed to the Prophet that goes, "As for the 3 able men who lagged behind and who were boycotted and excluded from the life of the community to the end, that vast as it is, the earth seemed constricted and their souls constrained. As for these who realized that they could not flee from Allah but could find solace in coming back to Him, as for these, God has pardoned their offense so that they would in lowliest plight repentant stand." 980. When Ka'b was pardoned, he narrated, "I entered the mosque. When the Prophet saw me, his face showed a smile of content, and it is known that when he feels content, his face would gleam like a full moon." Smiling in content would be reflected in brightening of the eyes and in an expressive, satisfied look of the face. On the other hand, an angry smile is a cunning smile of someone envious or outraged. His eyes would be dark and gloomy, and his face pale. The content aura of a heartly smile is lost, so the context will let me know the type of smile that is there. When the story of Solomon was narrated in the Quran, we came across another mention of a smile. "And to Solomon were thronged his forces, embodying arrays of the jinn, the men and the birds, marshaled in proper order. And when they reached the valley of the ants, where ants formed a great number of communities or colonies, one ant said to the rest, 'O you ants, go back to your dwellings so that Solomon and his hosts would not crush you unawares.' And there did Solomon's countenance turned expressive of amusement, and he smiled laughingly at what he thought was indeed incredible, and at once he prayed, "O Allah, my Creator, I beseech you to actuate me with the feeling of gratitude for your grace and blessing and the beneficent gift you bestowed on me and my parents." 27:17-19. If the word laughingly was not there, one might assume that such a smile of Solomon was an angry smile. However, the word laughingly indicated that it was a smile of content, gratitude, and satisfaction that could not be interpreted otherwise. The verse that followed emphasized that meaning. Thus, context is essential for the proper interpretation of the meaning of a word. It specifies that meaning and restricts it. Let us return to verse 799, which reads, "Be indulgent and favor forbearance, making due allowances, and enjoin conformity of life and conduct to the requirements of morality, disregarding the impudent who are insolently disrespectful. Add to it, repel what distastefully affects you by what is morally and spiritually sublime." 41:34. We will note that there are two commands. A. To disregard the impudent and stay away from him, which is relatively easy. B. To do good to the ones who do you harm, which is not easy. For whenever you decide to be good to those ones, Satan will be there for you to put you down by reminding you of the offense these ones have done to you. To the whispers of Satan will be added the evil-inclined self present inside each one of us. So there are two devils strengthening one another. Moreover, there may come a third devil, a human demon, to deter you further. Three devils gathering to stop you from being charitable to your enemy who has harmed you. To overcome all these is really difficult. That is why God has used the superlative noun sublime, reflecting such difficulty and the extreme effort needed to overcome it. This reminds us of the words of the Almighty in 12:23. The lady of the house tried to induce him, Joseph, to surrender his chastity. This is a woman who has power and authority. The poet says, "You are the one with all that. You are the one with all that is to have. If you do all what you say, you'll do." You are the one with all that is to have. If you do all what you say, you will do. These are depictions of superlative persons. You have to have a sublime spirit to be able to overcome the hurdles of being charitable to the bad one. The verse 41:35 continues, "And there you will find that he who harbors to you enmity and ill will has come to be as though he were a friend, actuated with the feeling of sincerity." The verse did not say has become a friend, but rather as though he were a friend, indicating that your enemy has become looking like an intimate friend, but his heart has not yet cleared up completely from enmity. You come across many people who are like that. Their hearts are loaded with problems, yet their behavior looks good. This fact is reflected in a saying by Imam Shawkani: "One may do his best to look knowledgeable to the extent that he is considered among the cream of scholars." That is why God says in 41:35, "Repel what distastefully affects you by what is morally and spiritually sublime. And there you will find that he who harbors to you enmity and ill will has come to be as though he were a friend." Such a disposition, characterized with sublimity, cannot be attained except by those who exercise patience in adversity, forbearance under provocation, and constancy in labor and effort. One must be extremely patient. Calamity befalls him and he faces it with forbearance and good deeds. There is this narration of Abu Huraira that someone came to the Prophet and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have those kin that I keep in touch with, but they sever such relation. I do them good and they do me harm. I stay patient with them, and they are abusive to me. I give them, and they deprive me. The Prophet said to him, if you really do that, it is as if you are making them swallow hot ashes, and you will have God's support over them so long as you continue doing that. You will have a guiding angel that you do not see, and you will have respect in the hearts of those who stand against you. People watch someone cursing another, but that other one stands still and does not curse back. If you follow this cursing person, you will find no blessing in his life. Wherever he directs his face, no goodness is around. When he faces some disaster, and this will happen for sure, no one is going to lend him a hand or feel sorry for him. He will be sitting wondering, what wrong have I done that made people not help me when I went bankrupt, or not ask about me when I fell in such a problem? On the other hand, people would love that other silent guy and respect him. This is because of the blessing of that supporting angel from God to that patient, forbearing, polite person. In 41:35, nor can such a disposition be attained except by those who are so fortunate as to be divinely endowed with such a privilege. This high grade of his enemy becoming his friend cannot be reached except if one is extremely patient and forbearing. And when one angered, they forgive and do not entertain the thoughts of ill will. 42:37. Why love such a man and respect him? Because this is a man who is tasting bitterness and yet endures it, letting out of him only goodness in return. He is doing that because he awaits the prize of the hereafter. So he is endowed that high grade of being loved and supported by Allah. He has become one of the lucky ones whom God loves, as he obeyed him, doing what he was told to do and avoiding what he was told to avoid. When we look back at these three sets of verses, we will come across Satan and his jinn devils, as well as human demons and devils. God tells us to try to do goodness to demons of mankind, for by doing so, you may be able to repel their evil. It is legitimate to do whatever it takes to avoid the evil of human demons, even if this takes some pretending. Human demons can be tamed, but jinn ones, Satan's tribe, cannot. They have one fixed objective, to lure you into hellfire. They cannot be satisfied by anything else other than to fulfill that objective. These have no solution other than seeking refuge with God, who created them, to send them away from you. I ask God to let the truth run on my tongue and to make you benefit of what I say. He is indeed capable of that. Our last supplication would be to thank Allah, Lord of all worlds. Peace and blessings be upon you.
وقال المحدث.
ونسأل الله عز وجل أن يجعل ما قلناه وما سمعناه زادا إلى حسن المصير إليه، وعتادا إلى يمن القدوم عليه، إنه بكل جميل كفيل، وهو حسبنا ونعم الوكيل. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد، والحمد لله رب العالمين.